LSU misses on a couple of portal targets. So where do they turn next? We're talking about it Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. The Tigers miss on a couple of portal targets. So where do they go next? Let's dive into it here on today's episode. We'll start with the portal offensive tackle. Apparently a tackle and a safety. The two players, the two positions really, that LSU is targeting most here. Not my words, as Brian Kelly's words. We'll remind you that here in just a quick second. But Pete Nakos and others, the portal kings as they were as far as reporting. Josh Thompson from Northwestern, a guy LSU was interested in, had conversations, was on LSU's, and Josh Thompson was on, had LSU on his short list. Looks like Josh Thompson is staying in the SEC, or is going to land in the SEC, but not at LSU, but instead in Knoxville at Tennessee. So Josh Thompson from Northwestern up in the Big Ten. He's a redshirt junior, so he'll be playing his fifth year of college football in 2025, but it'll be there on Rocky Top. And what's interesting about Josh Thompson is this is a guy that a season ago at Northwestern in 2023, Josh Thompson was a right tackle. So in theory, you would look at that and go, okay, well, this is a guy who played in virtually every game at right tackle. He's an outside guy. But in 2024, he played almost exclusively at right guard. He kicked in and played, 10 games at right guard here in 2024. For Northwestern. And if you go back earlier in his career, he also played some left tackle. He played right guard. So he's played all over the line. But here in his most recent college season, he was playing right guard for Northwestern. Now, it's worth mentioning, I don't really know what Tennessee is looking at for Josh Thompson. Are they looking at him as a guard or a tackle? It's worth mentioning that a year ago, of course, they brought in Lance Hurd from LSU, who started at left tackle this year, but didn't have a great season. And there were some opining that maybe Lance Hurd might jump back in the portal and Tennessee could look elsewhere. That remains to be seen at this point. Of course, Tennessee's season just came to an end this past weekend, losing in the college football playoff at Ohio State. But the other thing worth mentioning is that if Josh Thompson is going to play guard, that's not necessarily the spot LSU has to fill. Follow me here, okay? You've added Braylon Moore, the Virginia Tech center, and he's going to slot in as your starting center. There's no doubt. He's a 2-year starting center from Virginia Tech. He's entering his final year of college eligibility. He's going to be your day one starting center. Your biggest weak link on the offensive line this year was DJ Chester at center. But DJ Chester is your most experienced returning lineman, having started every game this season. And Chester could very well kick out and play one of the guard spots. Paul Mabenga this year, when Garrett Dellinger was injured, started the final 4 games of the season at guard, and he's going to start at left guard in the bowl game, one would presume. So there's a real scenario, if you're looking ahead to 2025, where Braylon Moore plays center, Paul Mabenga and DJ Chester are your guards. And so then you're looking for help at tackle. And, Brian Kelly has said that's a spot they're looking at. And Tyree Adams is someone they're very high on. Weston Davis was a 5-star, a couple of young players, but you're going to add somebody at that position at tackle. But I want to remind you also, just if you're looking at guard, I mentioned Mabenga, I mentioned DJ Chester as well. Bo Bordelon's a guy that's been in the program now for 3 years. He's going to start at right guard in the bowl game. And then you just signed 2 elite level interior offensive linemen as well. Solomon Thomas, who you flipped on signing day, a 5-star from the state of Florida. And then there's Carius Kern. I want to remind you, these aren't my words. This is Brian Kelly. Listen to him. Brian Kelly on National Signing Day about Carius Kern, the number 1 interior offensive lineman out of the state of Arkansas.
Physically imposing, 6'4", 330 pounds. One of the stronger offensive linemen that I've recruited in some time. He is physically strong at the point of attack. He dominates his opponents. If you just turn on his film, he absolutely dominates his opponent. He is physically ready to play in the SEC right now. We'll have to see how the other things come together, but he is physically ready to play. He's a special player.
Okay, so Brian Kelly talking about Carius Kern, physically ready to play on the interior, see if everything else comes along. I mentioned you got Solomon Thomas, a 5-star, also an interior lineman. You've got Mabenga, you've got Chester. Like, that's 4 options on the interior. Now, I can't sit here and tell you I know everything about Josh Thompson. But this year, he moved from tackle to guard at Northwestern. If he projects as a guard, you might be good there. And listen, the bottom line is, like, this isn't Matt, LSU homer guy saying this. I think the evidence suggests if LSU wants a player in the portal, they can afford that player in the portal. The Tigers have added 13 players. They've got one of the top 2 or 3 portal classes in the country, depending on what scouting service you look at. And they're not out of money. I told you candidly, I had a conversation a week ago after LSU was going after Patrick Payton, and I was told in no uncertain terms they wanted him badly and they were going hard after him. And I said, do you have enough money? And they said, we have money to burn. So yes, like this wasn't a thing where you didn't get Josh Thompson because you didn't have enough money to spend in the portal. I think this is a situation where you're looking at a different position. So one thing I don't mind telling you is there was and you're not going to read this anywhere, I'm not going to tell you names, but you can choose to believe what you want to believe. But with respect to the portal and numbers and all that sort of stuff, just being very candid, I've been right about everything. I told you the number on Bryce Underwood, I was right. I told you the number about Jakeem Stewart, I was right. I told you the number on Cade Phillips, I was right. I've told you LSU had money to spend, and they're spending. Like I've had a really good finger on the pulse of this portal cycle and what LSU has to spend in NIL, et cetera. There was a player from an SEC school, a former 5-star lineman who's currently at an SEC school, who's not in the portal, but whose representatives pestered LSU to try to engage. And LSU did, and they made a very sizable offer to get this player. And it seems as though now that player is going to stay at his current school. Perhaps his agent was just playing both sides against the middle to get the better deal. I'm told it's not completely off the table, but unlikely. I also think it's possible that LSU has a silent commitment from a player currently playing in the college football playoff. This was Brian Kelly last week. Brian Kelly last week, meeting with the media, was asked about he was asked about the portal cycle, and what you're going to hear at the beginning of this cut is say we have some news breaking. That was the Patrick Payton news. So this was this past Saturday. The Patrick Payton news broke on Sunday. So the beginning of this is going to be Brian Kelly talking about we have news coming, which is Patrick Payton. But listen to the end of the cut, which is more important.
I think you're going to see some things here in the next 24 hours that are going to break that I can't talk about right now, but are done on our end and will break here in the next 24 hours. And then there'll be some more work on the offensive line and maybe on the back end of our defense.
More work on the offensive line, maybe the back end of our defense. I can't definitively tell you those are guys playing, but Brian Kelly also said in that press conference, he reminded the media that the portal cycle doesn't close until the 28th, but every team playing, remember, your portal window extends 5 days after the season ends. So there's going to be 2 teams who play on January the 20th in the national championship game, who those players have until January 25th for a port to enter the transfer portal. So you could have more players enter the portal. And I believe, again, I'm not disclosing something I know. Listen, I've been transparent with you. I'm telling you this is speculative on my part. I believe LSU has a silent commit on the offensive line and at safety. Otherwise, if they really wanted Josh Thompson and so offensive line is a dire need, they're not missing on that player. But we may have to wait just a little bit longer to see how that all plays out. And as it does, we'll talk about it right here. So Josh Thompson headed to Tennessee. Tigers still in search of that extra offensive lineman, which they will add before this portal cycle is over. We'll just have to be patient and see when that may happen. Tigers also missed on one of its safety targets, and that has been trickier for LSU. We'll give you the deets next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. If you want to be in that number when LSU takes on Baylor in the Texas Bowl, Game Time can help you get there. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can filter only incredible deals on great seats with Game Time picks. You can see the view from your seat on your phone before you buy. And they have the all-in pricing feature, which totals your cost up front. You have to turn that function on, but when you toggle, it'll show you the final price. So there's no surprises at checkout. And you can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. There's so many ways to save money on tickets, no matter when you buy. Actually, they have last-minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even up to an hour after the event starts. So if it's sports or comedy or music or theater or any live event you want to be at, you need to download the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem with the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. So the Tigers miss on Josh Thompson, exit the sweepstakes, whatever you want to call it. One spot that has been more difficult for LSU to lock in on has been the safety position. And unfortunately, this has certainly been one where LSU has thrown their hat in the ring on some players that they want. And they've just been unable so far to lock down players that they want. And the latest is Tawfiq Byard. So Tawfiq Byard, who's the younger brother of Kevin Byard, all-pro safety in the NFL. Byard has played at South Florida for the Bulls down in Tampa. And he is projected now to land at Colorado with Coach Prime there in Boulder. And I was told by someone within the LSU portal search process that safety has been more difficult than they anticipated. If you just follow the process and how it's all played out so far, the number one safety in the portal was Dylan Thieneman. Back-to-back 100 tackle seasons there at Purdue in the Big Ten, entered the portal. LSU never got him to campus, but they did have some Zoom and preliminary conversations. But ultimately, Dylan Thieneman landed at Oregon. Zechariah Poyser is a guy that LSU did get on campus. This is a kid from the state of Florida who is playing at Jacksonville State in Alabama. LSU, Auburn, Florida all got in the mix, and it was thought he was going to land at Florida, being a Florida kid ending up back in his home state. Well, he did land in his home state, but not with the Gators, instead at Miami with the Hurricanes. And those are 2 guys that LSU wanted. And I think this is maybe a further illustration that no matter how much money you have to spend and what playing time you have available, you're still not going to land everybody. You're certainly going to get your lion's share. I mean, LSU has landed 13 portal commitments already, and some of the best players in the portal at receiver, at quarterback, at defensive end. I mean, LSU has been very aggressive and landed immediate impact players. You got a starting center, you got a starting cornerback. I mean, you got starters. I would guess no less than 6 immediate starters already out of the portal of the 13. And the number's probably closer to 8 and may end up at 9 or 10, depending on how this class finishes. So LSU's had success, but you still need help there at safety. And you wanted Thieneman, he ended up at Oregon. You wanted Poyser, he ended up at Miami. Now, that's not new. Byard is another guy that LSU threw their hat in the ring, and now he lands at Colorado. So where do you go? And just to reiterate, Safety, we've talked about here wants, needs, and musts. Like running back is a want. I mean, you don't need a running back. You'd like to have a veteran guy. I mean, you got Caden Durham going into his second year. You're bringing in 5-star Harlan Berry, the number 2 running back in the state, JT Lindsay. You've got Caleb Jackson, for now anyway, coming back next year. You could conceivably have Trey Holly back. You'd love to have someone with more experience at the running back position, but we'll see how that all goes. But it's not a need. It's just it'd be a luxury. So you have wants and needs and musts. Safety is a must. Safety is an absolute must. It was not even debatable your weakest position defensively. Your defensive ends were really good this year, and while maybe you didn't have elite level talent at tackle, your guys at tackle were serviceable. You didn't have great depth at linebacker, but Whit Weeks was a 100-tackle guy. Losing Harold Perkins certainly stung, but you had a veteran there in Greg Penn, a senior. You saw a young guy late in the season in Devon Keys kind of emerge for you. So linebacker is a spot that was good for you this year, and at times with Weeks was great. Cornerback Zy Alexander was your highest rated defensive player, along with Ashton Stamps, who teams ignored Alexander and targeted Stamps, and Stamps led your team in pass breakups this year. Safety was undeniably the weak link. They were not good in run defense. They were not good in pass coverage. Safety was just bad. We always talk about Pro Football Focus, right? Pro Football Focus, it's not the metric, it's a metric. But if I go and look at starting players on this defense and I look at their season-long grades, Jordan Gilbert and Major Burns among the starters were your lowest graded players. Major Burns among your starter was your lowest graded player by Pro Football Focus with a 58. Jordan Gilbert with a 60 was the next lowest rated defensive player. Deshaun Spears had a 61.9. Oddly, Sage Ryan, for all of the Sage Ryan slander, was your highest rated safety at a 68.3. So Ryan is now obviously at Ole Miss, but the point being, you're losing Major Burns. Ryan is now at Ole Miss. You're returning Spears and Gilbert. Gilbert was your second lowest rated and your lowest rated returning defensive player by Pro Football Focus. So you have to go address that spot. I still think that Deshaun Spears has a super high ceiling and could be fantastic. But again, in the portal era, you don't have to guess. You don't have to hope and think he could be better. You can go get a veteran player and let him compete. And if the young guy wins, awesome. But you don't have to sit back and hope the young guy wins. There are systems in place that you can take advantage of to make your roster better immediately. You lost Kylan Jackson as well via the transfer portal. He's headed to TCU. So the wild card here maybe is Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech, who's a cornerback but also can play safety. So I could see a world where Ashton Stamps returns. He's one cornerback. You're bringing in DJ Pickett, 5-star, number 1 cornerback in the country. Jakeem Jackson is coming in as well. I mean, right there, and then PJ Woodland, that's 4 guys that could very well pace your cornerback room. And Mansour Delane could play safety for you if you need to. Or Mansour Delane may be a starting cornerback, and you go get a safety in the portal. Just like with the offensive line, I believe LSU already has a silent commit at safety. I don't have a name. I'm telling you candidly. If I did, I probably wouldn't tell you the name, but I might hint that I knew it. I'm telling you right now, I don't know. I don't know the name, but remember, Brian Kelly, I'll play this again for you for those if you it didn't resonate the first time, but Brian Kelly told you they're going to get help at offensive line and on the back end of the defense.
I think you're going to see some things here in the next 24 hours that are going to break that I can't talk about right now, but are done on our end and will break here in the next 24 hours. And then there'll be some more work on the offensive line and maybe on the back end of our defense.
Okay, so like he's telling you, offensive line and safety are the two spots still where they've got to get players, and they're going to get players. And LSU has the money to spend, and they're going to do it. It's just not going to be some of the players that we talked about. And so that leads me to believe you probably have silent commits from guys currently playing either the bowl game or the college football playoff. Remember, after January the 1st, you're going to have 4 more teams whose seasons end, and all of those players will have a 5-day period to enter the transfer portal. So maybe we'll see some movement then, or maybe it'll take until a week later, or even beyond that to the championship game. But you have this portal window, you've got the February high school signing date, and then you've got the spring portal window as well to add to this roster. And LSU is going to do it. Brian Kelly said point blank, they're going to get to 15. They're at 13 right now. Offensive tackle, safety, they're going to add them. And I happen to be of the belief that they have silent commits from guys that are still playing. So we'll wait and see how it plays out. And if I'm wrong, we'll talk about it. But when it comes to the portal and this sort of roster cycle, I've had a pretty good finger on the pulse, but we'll continue to follow it. And if I have a name, I'll certainly tell you if I feel like I can. Okay, it's Locked on LSU, your team every day. So what does LSU do moving forward here? We'll continue to discuss Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. Those prop bets are thrilling. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel has bets for which player will score, how many points each team will score, and so much more. So check it out right now. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, wrapping up today's episode of Locked on LSU. A couple of names may be worth keeping an eye on. And again, I want to clarify and be abundantly clear here. I believe LSU has silent commits. And some may be wondering, well, how can you have silent commits if guys aren't in the portal? Is that tampering? Is it cheating? If LSU is having direct contact with a player, then yes, that is tampering. But as I've explained before, that's not exactly how it works anymore. Essentially, every player has an agent, a representative, someone working on their behalf. And there's nothing to prevent that person from trying to negotiate a deal on behalf of their client, the person who they represent. So that is very common. So I do fully believe there are players who could be on playoff teams right now who intend to enter the portal, who are playing this out with their team. And when their season ends, they'll enter the portal and will land at LSU. I do believe that's going to happen at either position or at either or maybe both, safety and offensive tackle. But just a few names to throw out that are in the portal that could be worth keeping an eye on. So again, according to 24/7 Sports, the #1 safety in the portal is Dylan Thieneman from Purdue. He's headed to Oregon. The #2 safety was Zechariah Poyser from Jacksonville State. He's headed to Miami. You have Devontae Smith from Alabama is heading to Notre Dame. Essentially, most of the top guys are all accounted for. Now, it is worth mentioning, as we talked about, that Mansour Delane from Virginia Tech could play safety. Well, his teammate at Virginia Tech, Jalen Stroman, also entered the transfer portal, and he is uncommitted. 6'1", 200-pounder, the #6 safety in the transfer portal. Tigers have already nabbed 2 players from Purdue, from Virginia Tech. So it's entirely possible that you could land another there. Another interesting name, one that will sound familiar to you, is Jalen Catalon. So Jalen Catalon is a kid who started his career at Arkansas, and this past year, Jalen Catalon played at UNLV. And he's back in the portal again now for a final season of eligibility wherever he may land. So this is a guy with a ton of SEC experience. He went to Arkansas and played at Arkansas for 3 seasons. And then in 2023, transferred to Texas and played 1 season, played in 8 games with 4 starts for the Longhorns in 2023. And this year in 2024 has played at UNLV, and he was first team All Mountain West. So this is a guy that's played a ton of football. He was a 2020 signee. I'm sorry, forgive me. He's a 2019 signee. So he played in 4 games as a true freshman in 2019. So that was a red shirt. He played in 2020 at Arkansas, 10 games with 9 starts at strong safety. And so obviously the COVID year doesn't count. So it left him 3 remaining seasons. He started 6 games in 2021, but then was sidelined with an injury. In 2022 at Arkansas, played in the first game of the season, was injured, and was lost for the remainder of the season. So that was a medical red shirt. So he went to Austin, played in 8 games for Texas with 4 starts, and then this year went to UNLV, but has another medical redshirt year available, which effectively be a 7th year in college. Remember, 2019, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we see this sometimes, but you're talking about a guy in Jalen Catalon that is familiar with the SEC, playing in both Arkansas and at Texas, and has played in a tremendous amount of football games throughout his career. So 61 forgive me, that was I'm trying to find the total number of games played. My apologies. I'm having trouble landing on that number. But you're talking about a guy that has played a ton of football. I mean, I could do this quickly. So 4 games as a freshman, 10 games in 2020 in the COVID year, that's 14. Then 6 games in 2021, that's 20. Played just 1 game in 2022 for the injury, that's 21 games. And then at Texas, played in 8 games, it's 29. And then this year, played in every game for UNLV. So that's 43 career games played for Jalen Catalon. Again, a familiar name, familiar with the SEC. I don't know that that's the guy LSU's going after, but that's to do with a ton of experience, who's got SEC experience, who's someone just to remember, file that name away that could be worth keeping an eye on. One other player, and again, this is not anything that I have heard from anyone associated with LSU. I want to be very clear about that. And it's not about offensive line or safety, but it's about quarterback. So we've talked a good bit about quarterback, especially with Bryce Underwood flipping to Michigan, LSU landing Michael Van Buren in the portal, seeing Ricky Collins leave. So right now you got 3 quarterbacks. You got Nussmeier back, you got Michael Van Buren, and then obviously you've got Colin Hurley. That's 3. So you either need to replace a mid-depth piece or you need a young player. And Emil Picarella is a name worth keeping an eye on. He's a 3-star from U-High in Baton Rouge. His family transferred in late in his career. So Picarella played the 2024 season for the U-High Cubs on the LSU campus. He's 6'2", 210. Again, a 3-star. Not the number 71 quarterback. Let's see, in the composite, he's the number 69 quarterback. So this is a project-type player, but a guy who has Power 5 interest. He's got interest and offers from Mississippi State and Oklahoma State. Ole Miss recruited him. Oregon, Pitt, Florida State. LSU has recruited him, although they have not offered. His offer list includes Arkansas State, Houston, Marshall, Mississippi State, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, Oregon, Pitt. Those are the offer. Akron, some smaller schools that he has offers from Kentucky, Louisville. So he's got some of those types of offers. And if you're looking to bring in a player who you know isn't going to play right away, but is a body, right? Someone who can give you another arm, a camp arm, so to speak, who might have the potential to grow into that position over time. Just a name worth filing away. You got to add another quarterback somewhere, and maybe Picarella in the February high school window could be a name to keep an eye on. Just file that away. Again, not anything I know, just something that would make sense if you find yourself in need of adding a quarterback. Okay, of course, as we run through it, we'll talk about it all here on Locked on LSU. Hey, we're glad you're with us. Do me a favor, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app, rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. And, of course, let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.